You know what? I need a little bam bam in my life. So let's build a planishing hammer from scratch. Coming up. Hey, how's it, jokes, and welcome to my shop. My name is Duff, as in differential or difficult. And this is Rad Rods for Africa, where sometimes we build stuff to build stuff with. I made this full-size drawing on an old piece of cardboard here, just so I've got a plan to work to. So this is the frame, which I will probably make from 50mm 2-inch box section. My depth here is 600mm or 24 inches. And this way we've got 400mm clearance or 16 inches. I've got this cheap air chisel that I'm going to use as the hammer in my contraption. I have no idea how many blows per minute, but let's give it a try and see how it works. We can always swap it out for something else if it really doesn't do the job. My air chisel or air hammer will mount right there. And now of course you have to be able to open here. So in this design that I'm going to be using, this top section will hinge there, so it means it can open up. It is not my brainchild. You do get commercially available planishing hammers that uses this principle. The other popular method is to have this bottom die adjustable up and down, which means you need some mechanism here with screws and a threaded bar or something like that. Now I think this is much simpler to build. You have a hinge point there. This can move up and down. So I'm going to give this a go. I found this old turnbuckle or rigging screw, what would you call it, that I can fit right there on these extension pieces. So it's got a left and a right hand thread. This nut can be used for locking it. So by turning this, I'll be able to open or close that top part of the frame. So I've got some sort of plan in place. Let's make some parts. I'm making my frame from this box section 50 by 38. That's 2 inches by 1.5 inches. I got the dimensions off of my drawing to establish where I must make my 45-degree cutouts. So now we can bend it up and see how it turns out. Looking pretty good. Clamp down on the table to make sure that it's flat. And I'm just checking that it's square here with my rusty trusty old framing square. I tell you, some of the tools I have has been with me for many decades. So they might not look new anymore, but they still work well. So it's looking good. I think I'm just going to tuck it together here. Now I've realized I didn't open the gas on my bottle, you know. Let's try again. I'll grind out that mess just now. Okay, now this piece is still loose. I want to check that this is parallel to that. Let's do this to make sure we get the same. 54,8, 55. It actually needs to move in a little bit. The thing is too freaking short. Now how the hell did that happen? This is supposed to sit there. The dude obviously can't measure. Damn it. Oh well, I'm just going to have to cut it and extend it. Luckily it's just steel. I think what I'm actually going to do is cut it on this joint and there and just make a new piece to fit in here. So this can move up. And then hopefully this time it will be right. Asshole. So focus now, Duffy. From that corner to this corner is exactly 481 millimeters. Now remember that. New piece of steel. Let's see now. From there, it needs to be exactly 381. Just kidding. 481. 481. It's embedded in my memory now. Right. .481 millimeters. And a 22.5 degree angle using another rusty but trusty old tool. There we go. And another 22.5 degree angle on this side. Let's just make sure here that the OG is not going to do it thrice. Yes, that is going to be the right thing now. So now I will just undo my work and cut it here and here so I can put in that piece. Okay, Duffy, then just do it twice to get it nice. Mistake? What mistake? It looks perfect to me. My two frame pieces are now fully welded up, and I spent a little bit of time with the weld blender to make it shiny. So now I gotta make a hinge for this point. I gotta do the brackets here for that turnbuckle, and I gotta come up with a clamp here to hold my air hammer. Look, squeaky mouse tapping and cutting oil. I saw this little bottle standing at one of my local hardware shops, and it was cheap, man. I think 9 rands, about 50 US cents. So I thought I'd give it a try. Actually doesn't work bad at all. So I've made all these bits and pieces. Let's go through them one by one to see what goes where. So I made the heavy duty hinge bracket. This is a piece of 10mm 3/8 plate, and these two side pieces here is 8mm. Stuff I found here in my box, 8mm is 5/16. That's not going to go anywhere. So then I'm going to weld these two so we call them caps on here, onto the end of the two frame pieces, and then this will weld in like that, and that will provide me with a very sturdy hinge point. These brackets I made from 3mm plate, 1/8. I've got a 12mm half-inch bolt through there for my rigging screw or turnbuckle. Now the plan for then is for that, we can just get it in place roughly to weld on something like that. And then when I turn my turnbuckle, I will be opening and closing these two frame pieces. I found this piece of heavy wall pipe in my offcut bin, so I cut a slot in it and manipulated it a little bit. It now fits very nicely over my air hammer, and then I've got these two little tabs that I will weld on there, and then when you tighten these bolts it will clamp the air hammer very firmly, and then this contraption can weld onto my frame like that to hold the hammer in place. I'm about to weld on these two tabs that will form my hinge, so I just clamped my two frame pieces down flat onto the table to ensure that everything will line up nicely and be straight and square and nice and everything. Okay, lekker man, my hinge is nice and tight, but not so tight that I can't move it. So I'm happy with that. And here on this side, when I close it up, it lines up, which is exactly what we want as well. So all that trouble that we went through to clamp it down onto the table to hold things in place and in line paid off. I've shaped the end of my frame here to take my clamp for the air hammer, and now I'm just checking that it's going to be sitting nice and parallel and square and centered. I think that's quite important before I can weld it on. Two light tacks just to hold it in place. I can double check everything again to make sure that we're sitting nice and parallel. Looks good. So I think I'm going to weld it up. I need a hammerhead, if I can call it that, that can fit in here. So I think I'm going to take one of these chisels and cut it off, and then turn something on a lathe that I can weld on here. Let me scratch here in my box of offcuts and see what I can find. This is not thick enough, it's too thin. No, that's just a piece of pipe. This, I think this can work. Yes, an offcut from a previous job. Yes, let's try this. So let's get this piece in here. It measures 45 millimeters. That's more than enough. That's a little shy of 2 inches. So I've got enough meat. I'm going to clean up the face here, turn it down a little bit, drill a hole in there, then I can stick the shaft of that chisel bit in and weld it on. I still don't have a parting tool, so all your pro fitters and turners and machinists, please close your eyes while I cut this thing off with the grinder. Well, we've got the grinder going. Let's cut this chisel in half as well. So if I measure it properly, this should be a nice tight fit in that hole. Yes, awesome. So now I'm just going to weld this on here, and then I'll stick this back in the lathe and just clean it up a little bit. Ach no man, I'm seriously unhappy now. This shaft here is bent. Look here. Damn it. I just assumed it was straight. Well, obviously it was not. And I've already got it welded onto my hammer bit, if we can call it that. Hammer die, hammer piece. Well, I think I'm just going to polish up this a little bit anyway. And give it a try, and if it really doesn't work, we'll just have to make another one. Okay, my clamp's fully welded, so let's see how my hammer is going to fit. Now, if I stick it in like that, this trigger mechanism is catching there. So I think I'm going to just put it in like that for now. I am toying with the idea of cutting off the handle and tapping it here for the air fitting, but I think I'm just going to leave it like this for now. If I do it this way, I can still use the hammer or chisel then for other jobs. So I think for now I might just tie this up with a cable tie and give it a few test drives like that. Let me tighten up my clamp and see if it will hold. Oh yeah man, that's going nowhere. Perfect. Right, let's assemble this business so that we can see what we have so far. I'm just going to clamp this bottom part of my frame to the bench here for now. And now my top part of the frame is gonna go in here. It's a nice tight fit, but that's exactly what I want. It's gonna try it, there we go. And just wiggle it a bit so I can line up that bolt, which is this one here. There we go, almost. Voila, it's a nice tight fit, but it will prevent sideways movement. Obviously when I tighten the bolt it will help as well. Okay, let's get a nut on here. Tighten this up a little bit. Nice, very nice and stiff. So my turnbuckle or rigging screw will now go in here. Like that. There we go. So by adjusting this, I can now open and close it. This is nice and tight. That's working very well. So next for me then is to now come up with, so we call it a die holder, and then the bottom dies. So I would definitely need to cut some piece off here. So for dies, I decided to spread the love. and I asked Andre at Pro Engineering to machine this up for me from EN8 material, which is a little tougher than mild steel. So this one will be the holder, and then the die can drop in like that. The diameter we've got here is about 40 millimeters, tad more than 1.5 inches. So these ones are all still flat. I will radius them as required and obviously polish them up a little bit more as well. So the next step then would be to attach this one to that bottom part of the frame. So I've decided to make that holder removable. So I've made this little bracket that can bolt on there, and then my plan is to weld this onto that bracket. Then my die can drop in like that, and then we can adjust our top frame down and set it up as we want. I tightened it down with that turnbuckle, and I've got it all nicely lined up now. So now I can weld it on. Jeez, so I don't know what happened there. The old man went all shaky and made a horrible weld. I had to resort to the weld blender to hide it from the YouTube welding inspectors. Anyway, it won't go anywhere, and a bit of paint will hide it as well. So that's in place. I think I need to go and radius one of these dies a little bit. I've got one of these dies chucked up in my lathe, and I'm just going to radius it a little bit using a flap disc here in my battery grinder. Just a little bit for a start. I can fine tune these as I go along. I think I'm just going to polish it a little bit with some sandpaper, and then we can always keep refining as we go along. So I'm just going to start polishing this a little bit with some sandpaper. I can work my way through the different grades and get it to a highly refined polish if I want. But I'm just going to make a start, and we can refine it as we go along. So I've only got P150 sandpaper on my test die, but I'm keen to try this thing now. I can always polish this more down the line, probably take it up to 1200 or something. I'd like to have some air control before I give my contraption a test drive though. So like I said earlier, I might cut this handle off here, but for now I've just cable tied the trigger in the open position. And then I can still take this out and try another hammer if I don't like this one, and also make it multifunctional. So I scavenged here amongst my junk, and I found this regulator from an old compressor. So I reckon if I mount that here somewhere, I should be able to adjust the intensity with which the hammer blows take place by changing the air pressure here. If I don't have this and I give it the full shop air, I've got no control about how hard or how much this thing hammers. So I think I'm just going to attach this regulator right here. So I just tacked on this little plate here, and now my regulator can fit like this, and I can just bolt it on. There's a tiny little nut. Well, at least 2 nuts. And then I'm going to stick in this bit of pipe here. I can just tighten it up there with a little hose clamp. Now this side I've got a quick disconnect. because I still want the option to be able to change my hammer if I need to or want to, or use it for another job. Down the line, if I'm happy with this, I can change this, maybe cut the handle off and plumb it permanently. We'll see. Right, so now if I plug my shop air in here, we should be rocking and rolling. Let's find out. Awesome. So far so good. But I want an on-off switch, man. I don't want to be running around plugging and unplugging the shop area. So out there in the first world, guys will use a commercially available foot valve as an on-off switch. Easily bought with a click of a few buttons and delivered to your doorstep. Now out here in the forest, this online shopping business does not work so well. And yeah, I couldn't find something like that in my local shops. So I'm just building my own contraption. I much prefer to build my own stuff in the peace and tranquility of my shop. So there, that needs to go on there, and then somewhere is a nut. There's my nut to hold this into place, if I can get it on there. Oh, I need to fit my spring first. Let me just hook in my spring, and then I'll explain to you what the hell it is that I'm doing here. If I can get my little parts to fit. There we go. And the nut. So what I've got here is a standard 1/4 inch ball valve. This side I've got a quick connect for air supply. Plug the shop air in there. Now if I press here, I open the ball valve and the spring returns it, so it closes again. So let's find out if it works. Now plug the shop air in here. Let's see. Awesome, it works very well. And then here's the pedal part that I made from some scrap I found here in the shop. That's what the mechanics look like underneath my pedal. So I've got that little wheel that's attached to my lever of the ball valve, and this curvy piece of plate just allows me more travel on that ball valve lever. Let me show you. It works so well, I might even give it a nice paint job. Yeah, definitely deserves a paint job, I think. I'm not that fond of painting though. So let's first see if we can eat the pudding before we go to the trouble. So I've got my shop air connected here. That's the orange pipe. And this blue pipe that's connected on the outlet side. I'm now going to plug it into my regulator here. And now if I step on this, I should have action. Fantastic. Let's see what it can do. Just going to put this on the floor. Let's make some dents in this piece of scrap 18 gauge 1mm plate. Let's see, what was that, about 30 seconds. And those dents are pretty much gone. Yes. Let's try something else. I'm just looking at my die before we try something else. And if you look carefully, you can actually see there, it's a bit of a high spot. So I just need to refine my die a little bit more and get this radius better and more polished. But it's working alright for a first try. I found this flat disc in my offcut bin. It's also 18 gauge. It was a bit rusty, so I cleaned it up a little bit. And I made another die with slightly more of a radius. The finish is still only P150, so we will polish it more, but let's see how it works. I'm just going to close up this gap with my turnbuckle until we're nice and tight. Now this plate is flat, so I want to see if we can dish it, because we've got a bottom die with more of a radius. Let's see how it goes. So what was that? Maybe 1 minute, and we've got a very nice dish going already. So obviously if I work it more, I'll get more of a dish. Let's attack it here with the hammer a little bit. Now my stump doesn't have much of a hollow, but let's see what happens. Slightly more dishy and all messed up now. Let's go stick it through the planishing hammer and see if we can get it to look a little bit better. There we go, not bad at all. I can see my die has got a little bit of a flat spot, so I need to spend some more time on refining my dies. But I hereby declare my planishing hammer a success and therefore worthy of that paint job. And now it's blue, like all my other machines. So I specifically did not want to have this welded to a stand, because I want it portable. Because the way it is now, I could, for instance, use it to planish the roof of a car, like I'm doing here. I can now just tighten up here with my turnbuckle and then move my business. And then for the stationary application, I made these clamps so I can fix it to my bench. It's nice and sturdy now. I guess you could make a floor stand and bolt it to that, but you know what, no matter how big your shop is, it's never big enough. So that floor stand's just going to take up more floor space. So I would just rather hang it here on my wall when I don't use it, and then it's out of my way. And now I have a little Bam Bam in my life. You can buy it or you can build it. For me, building is just so much more satisfying, and you get exactly what you want. Thanks for hanging out with me out here in the shop. I enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, have a lekker one.